All right, so in this video, we're going to go through the solutions to the IB Economics Higher Level Paper 1. This is the November/October 2002 version. Now, in previous videos, we've already gone through the solutions for questions 1 and 2, and today we're going to be looking at question 3b, the second part of question 3, which is the final question of this paper, and this is going to be worth 15 marks. Okay, so in this question, we're going to have to talk about what a trading block is and the pros and cons of this arrangement, as well as some of the real-world examples. Now, as usual, we're going to start with a discussion on key terms, and there are about 7 of these. These include trading block, aggregate demand, aggregate supply, trade creation, trade diversion, economies of scale, and sovereignty. Right, so let's begin with the this first term, this idea of a trading block. A group of countries that have signed agreements to reduce or eliminate trade barriers among nations, such as tariffs, quotas, and import restrictions. So that's what a trading bloc is. Essentially, a bunch of countries that have agreed to kind of be friendly with each other. Now, in terms of aggregate demand and supply, I mean, you guys should be pretty familiar with these concepts by now, but it's good to just to define the terms. The total demand for goods and services in an economy at a given price level and time. That's aggregate demand, and for aggregate supply, that is the total supply of goods and services that firms in an economy are willing and able to produce at a given price level and time. In terms of trade creation, this occurs when trade increases due to the reduction or elimination of barriers within a trading bloc. For trade diversion, this is when trade is redirected from a more efficient global producer to a less efficient producer within the bloc due to a preferential treatment. And there's no K at the end of the word block, just to fix up the spelling a little bit. Now, in terms of economies of scale, this cost advantage is achieved by increasing production, reducing the average cost per unit. And lastly, we've got this idea of sovereignty, which is a country's ability to make its own laws and policies without external influence. A country's ability. Good, so that about does it for the key terms. Now if we go down a little bit, got space here for a couple of diagrams. Now, in terms of the diagrams, I've got a couple of them. We're going to have one for aggregate demand and supply and another one for economies of scale. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch what I think these diagrams might look like. So let's begin with the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. As usual, we've got this aggregate demand curve, call that AD1, and some sort of aggregate supply curve, we'll call that AS1, probably some sort of short run aggregate supply curve. Got something like inflation, and something like our GDP or output on the horizontal axes. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how if we increase aggregate demand from AD1 to AD2, and if we grow aggregate supply from AS1 to AS2, we're going to have a few things happening. So bear with me a moment while I just kind of set the diagram up a little bit. And for these economies of scale, we're going to have, maybe sort of So output, and let's say, well, yeah, sure, we can have some like cost per unit or something. And typically what happens with these economies of scale diagrams is that as you increase output, you reduce the cost per unit. Okay, so these are what I think the diagrams might look like. These are pretty standard sort of aggregate demand, aggregate supply diagrams, as well as the diagram for economies of scale. Now let's put some commentary behind this. So, sorry, I should probably just explain to you what we're going to do quickly. So in this aggregate demand and supply model, the one on the left, the economy starts at point A, which is the over here, which is the intersection between aggregate demand 1 and aggregate supply 1. Now, if a country joins a trading bloc, this can actually lead to an increase in exports as well as investment levels if firms anticipate additional demand. This will lead to an increase in aggregate demand from, say, 81 to 82. At the same time, firms might be able to import cheaper inputs, and there will be productivity gains from the economies of scale, which we see on the right-hand side. This will result in an increase in supply from AS1 to AS2. And so the overall outcome is we have this increase in the nation's GDP, which is the amount of goods and services that the country can produce, say from Y1 to Y2. Okay, so let's go through some commentary to explain this. So in terms of the initial equilibrium, we're going to say something like the economy starts at point A, where 81 intersects with 80 at price level P1 and output Y1. Okay, so that's the initial equilibrium condition. Next, we're going to say that, we're going to explain that how being part of a trading bloc will increase aggregate demand. Membership in a trading bloc can lead to increased exports. Additionally, investment levels may also rise if firms anticipate greater foreign demand or favorable economic conditions. The combined effect is an increase in AD from AD1 to just having a bit of trouble with the speech recognition there. Okay, and so that's how being part of this trading bloc can improve demand conditions. Next, we're going to discuss how being part of this trading bloc might improve the supply side. Access to cheaper imported inputs, as well as labor and capital, will enable firms to produce more. Furthermore, productivity gains from economies of scale will lead to cheaper production costs. The combined effect is an increase in AS from AS1 to AS2. Nearly got there. So to AS2. Okay, and so the last bit we're going to discuss how the combined effect is going to occur. The final outcome is an increase in our GDP from Y1 to Y2, while the impact on inflation is indeterminate depending on whether the demand or supply side is stronger. Y1 to Y2. Okay. Right, so there you have it. So that's I think a pretty decent commentary sort of around this diagram over here. And we can move on to the next bit, which is on some theory. We're going to talk about theory behind this stuff. We'll begin by listing some of the advantages of being a member of a trading bloc. These include trade creation and greater access to markets, economies of scale, freedom of movement and employment opportunities, stability and cooperation, increased economic growth, greater consumer choice and lower prices, as well as improved efficiency. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in some of these blanks. So that, in terms of that first one, in terms of trade creation and greater access to markets, being part of a trading bloc will have reduced barriers, such as tariffs and quotas, allow businesses to export and import more freely within the bloc. This improves efficiency by enabling countries to specialize in industries where they have a comparative advantage. Greater market size incentivizes businesses to expand operations, invest in innovation, and increase production. Good, so that's that first bit. Now, the second sort of advantage of being part of this trading bloc is this idea of economies of scale, which we've already discussed, but let's kind of properly define it. Access to larger customer base allows firms to produce in greater volumes, spreading fixed costs. For example, infrastructure and research over more units, reducing the average cost per unit. Example, EU migration policies allow workers from Eastern Europe, beg your pardon, jumped the gun there. Automotive manufacturers in the EU benefit from selling cars across the bloc without additional tariffs or regulatory hurdles. Now, the next sort of benefit from being part of this trading bloc is this idea of freedom of movement and employment opportunities. So when you are part of a trading bloc, your workers are able to move from one country or one area within the trading bloc to another, sort of with minimal barriers, I guess. And so this allows workers to, allows workers to move from one area to another. We call this labor mobility. Workers can relocate to regions with higher demand for their skills. Reducing labor shortages in some countries and unemployment in others. Example, EU migration policies allow workers from Eastern Europe to access job markets in wealthier nations like Germany and the UK. The next benefit of being part of a trading bloc is this idea of stability and cooperation. Economic integration fosters political stability by aligning the economic interests of member states. This reduces the likelihood of conflict and promotes diplomatic resolution of disputes. For example, the EU was created partly to ensure peace and cooperation in post-World War II Europe. The next benefit is this idea of increased economic growth. Integration encourages both domestic and foreign direct investment. As businesses seek to capitalize on the opportunities presented by a larger, unified market. Refer to diagram. In previous section. Good. A couple more to go. So, advantage number 6 is this idea of greater consumer choice and lower prices. With more firms competing across the bloc, consumers benefit from diverse product offerings and better prices. For example, EU consumers can purchase goods from any member state without additional duties or import restrictions. So this idea of sort of reducing trade barriers is ultimately sort of pro-consumer. It's ultimately good for consumers because it means that consumers now have more choice and probably better prices as well. And the final benefit or final advantage I can think of being part of this trading bloc is this idea of improved overall efficiency. Competitive pressures across encourage firms to innovate and adopt best practices to remain viable in the larger market. For example, EU companies have improved efficiency due to competition from technologically advanced firms in member states like Germany and France. Good. So I think that about does it for the sort of list of advantages. Next, we're going to talk about some of the disadvantages of being a member in a trading bloc, and these include trade diversion, impact on sovereignty, effect on multilateral trade, as well as unemployment in less competitive sectors. Preferential treatment within the bloc can lead to trade shifting from low-cost global suppliers to high-cost regional suppliers, reducing overall economic efficiency. For example, the EU's Common Agricultural Policy imposes tariffs on non-EU agricultural products, benefiting less efficient European farmers at the expense of global trade partners. That's been a mouthful. The second one is this idea of impact on sovereignty. Member states may need to align their domestic laws, regulations, and policies with bloc-wide agreements. Which can conflict with national priorities or cultural practices. For example, EU rules on fiscal discipline limit the ability of member states to manage their own budget deficits. So this idea is that once you're part of a trading bloc, once you're part of this, this group, you kind of give up a little bit of your internal control. You can't sort of manage your own spending and the way you necessarily want to, because it might sort of go against the policies of the wider group. So that's one of the major disadvantages of being part of this trading bloc. The third one is this idea of this effect on multilateral trade. Trading blocs prioritize internal agreements, potentially undermining global trade initiatives like those spearheaded by the World Trade Organization, WTO. For example, the EU's focus on internal cohesion has at times slowed down WTO negotiations for global trade liberalization. And the last sort of disadvantage is that some of these trading blocs can actually result in sort of regional unemployment. Industries in weaker economies may struggle to compete with more developed bloc members. Leading to job losses and economic decline in those sectors. For example, southern European countries like Greece and Portugal have faced deindustrialization and high unemployment due to competition from northern European industries. Yeah, so these trading blocs can, from time to time, result in unemployment in sort of I don't want to say weaker economies, but sort of maybe economies that can't compete as aggressively. All right, so just to sum up, the decision to remain in a trading bloc, like the EU, depends on balancing advantages against disadvantages. While countries like Germany benefit significantly due to export competitiveness, others, like Greece, face challenges in managing structural inefficiencies within a unified system. This evaluation underscores the need for nuanced policies to address regional disparities and maximize benefits. Yeah, something to that effect. I just want to have a short paragraph just to summarize some of this content that I've been talking about. Okay, so just to finish up, we obviously are going to have an example, and I think one of the most obvious one that comes to mind is really the EU. The European Union is a prime example of a trading bloc, offering benefits like trade creation, greater market access, and economic growth. Member states enjoy tariff-free trade, freedom of movement for workers and goods, and reduced transaction costs from Eurozone countries. For example, Germany has significantly benefited from its access to the EU market, while policies like the Schengen Agreement allow labor mobility across borders, addressing workforce shortages in wealthier nations. However, the EU also faces challenges such as trade diversion caused by policies like the Common Agricultural Policy, sovereignty concerns due to overriding national laws, and economic disparities between member states. The Eurozone debt crisis highlighted tensions with countries like Greece experiencing austerity measures and high unemployment. The UK's departure from the EU, Brexit, illustrates the trade-offs of membership as sovereignty and immigration concerns led to exit despite economic disruptions. This example demonstrates the complex balance between the advantages of economic integration and the challenges of shared policies and disparities. Alrighty, there you have it. So yeah, I think that's, if you were able to, again, I understand this was probably a little bit more on the wordy side, and this is really more than what you need, I think, in order to get sort of like a perfect score for this particular question. If you were able to sort of, I guess, produce something similar to this, or something to that closely sort of mirrors this kind of response, then I don't see any reason why you wouldn't get a perfect score for this particular question. So just to summarize, just to go through this, what we did is we started off by defining some of these key terms, and then we went through a diagram, and two particular diagrams come to mind: this idea of the aggregate supply and demand diagram, as well as economies of scale. Provided a bit of commentary on the diagrams, and then we follow this up with some theory and explanation to discuss some of the advantages as well as disadvantages of being a member in this trading bloc. And then we finished off with a real world example, in this particular case, the EU. Okay, so I think that about does it for this particular video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.